for anyone who's attending this session today, I'm sure you're thinking today about so many different things as you plan your MBA application. You're not only thinking of which school, you're thinking of which geography. And this is something that today's conversation, we hope to give you some data points that you can use while thinking about how to plan your MBA application. It's a complex year. There could be a lot of extraneous factors that influence your decision. So, feel free to keep putting comments in the chat box and we will keep answering them. So first, we will do a round of introductions. Hi, my name is Natasha and I head MBA Admission Services at the Red Pen. And with me today, we have two very interesting panelists to shed light on the most sought after business programs in the world, if not only in Europe. So what I will do is I will ask them to introduce themselves, and we have a lot of very interesting conversation points today. So I'm going to ask first our panelist Mitrubina to introduce herself, and then we will be acquainted with Pranjal as well. So Mitrubina, over to you.
Thanks, Natasha. Glad to be here. Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm Mitrubina. I went to INSEAD and my graduation year was December 2016, which is also the term as 16D. So a little bit background about myself. Pre-INSEAD, I worked at Citi and Jindal. I am a chartered accountant and my primary skills were finance and accounting. And at INSEAD, post-INSEAD, basically, I got into Intel in the leadership development program. It was an international career where I did things across strategic finance, FP&A, name it all across finance. And currently, I'm working in the Middle East, in Saudi, at a SaaS company startup called Lucidia. So that's about me. Over to you, Pranjal.
Thank you, Sheena. Hi everyone, I'm Pranjal. I basically started off as a lawyer once I went into undergrad. 5 years in, I decided not to be a lawyer, partly driven by the desire to do something different and less boring, but also partly by the desire to just see what's out there. And I got into management consulting, and that stint at Monitor Deloitte at that time Monitor Group. Lasted about 4 years, and in 2019, 2018 itself actually, I decided to pursue my MBA journey. And in 2019, with some support from a lot of support from Red Pen, I got into LBS. As you might coincide with the timelines, that halfway into my MBA, COVID happened. So it was a very interesting MBA experience for 2 years in London. I didn't come back. A lot of my peers came back to India and did a virtual sort of MBA, but I stayed and graduated in 2021, after which I moved to Sweden for a couple of years to work for Ericsson as part of the internal management consulting team in Stockholm. Very interesting experience for 2 years, and currently I work with LinkedIn as head of UK and Ireland talent strategy, sales strategy, and based in London.
So thank you very much, Mitrubina and Pranjal, and welcome. I think today's conversation, we benefit a lot from hearing about your personal experiences and the perspective, of course, because I'm sure that there will be questions around, how Europe is going to be a key element of decision making for an MBA aspirant at this point. So I think let's dive into conversation. Like I mentioned to anyone watching, please keep adding comments and we'll address them as we go along. But I think let's talk about why Europe. And we've seen traditionally that for most Indian applicants, they default to the M7, the US, premium set of schools, 7 schools. And that's a reality that we see every year. We still see it today. But when you were first researching programs, what made European programs feel like the smarter strategic move? Like, what would you ask Indian applicants to consider as data points to reflect on when they make their decision?
Do you want to go first, Katarina?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that was for me. Sorry, I thought you wanted to go first. But yeah, Natasha, coming back to your question, Yeah, it's not like joining or aiming for the M7 schools didn't cross my mind, or schools based in US, but a lot of it stems from core personal choices and asking very important questions. For me, when I was looking for MBA, I already had 6+ years experience, and I wanted to look at a cohort which came with a lot of similar professional maturity, experience, and a very international cohort. And that was when I bumped into schools like NCR, LBS, and what I understood is there are shorter programs, and the cohort has other peers who have higher experience. So what that really means is it really changes your experience during your MBA, because you have people who discuss live business. They share their experiences, and a very underrated experience of MBA is also learning from your peers, other than the professors and the coursework. So that was definitely one thing that really drew me to the schools in Europe. At the same time, I was looking for a very short time to be out of my workforce, because I mean, already having experience, I didn't want to spend 2 years out of work and then kind of go for other program. I mean, go for a in a post MBA jobs. So INSEAD was a perfect fit, because it's whether it's the D batch or the graduation batch. It's just 10 months. The D batch just has 2 months of either you can do internship or travel around. So it's literally 10 months. So that felt right, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted to learn business. I wanted to learn everything and anything other than finance. That fit well. Second factor obviously was the global exposure, which you get in US schools also. But Europe, I just felt the diversity was extremely high, because schools like INSEAD and LBS, they have a lot of folks coming from all around the world. So I was really excited that, and even before INSEAD, I had a very international career, and a lot of them knew about INSEAD. So this was really a plus point for me. And my advice to Indian applicants would be, just think beyond rankings. Think what you really want to do. For me, also personally, my partner, my husband, that time was located. He had a career in London, and it was like a plus point that, oh, I get to be in Europe, and we could travel to meet each other. So, and also both of us wanted to be closer to home, closer to India. So I think just evaluate these points. What are you really looking for? Are you looking for an international, truly globally, internationally fluid career? Are you looking for near home? Are you looking for a global, network? So I would tell the students, the students who are researching, to really think about these questions, and then identify whether European schools or schools in the US. Over to you, Pranjal. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitrina. Completely echo Mitrina's points there. I think your choice of school has to do so much has to do so much with what you really want out of your MBA. Because I think it's easy for everyone to get carried away in that bandwagon of we will only apply to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, or we will only apply to XYZ and 7 school because it's prestigious and because all the smart people I know are doing it. But probably the smartest choice is to take it very, very personally and think about where do you see the best value for money? Where do you see yourself not just during the MBA but after the MBA as well? So, in addition to what Ridhvina said, which was all very, very true, you need to think about the kind of experience you want to have. You also want to think about how am I going to get the ROI. So, for me, when I was looking for schools, I was actually from pretty early on quite partial to applying to LBS and maybe a few of the American schools as well, which I did in round one. In fact, once I got into LBS, I didn't apply to any of the M7 schools. So I had an application. I had the same from Yale, in admission from Yale and from LBS, and it was no brainer that has to be LBS. And I'll go into my personal reasons why. Firstly, I had peers and colleagues from LBS. They had some great things to say. So rather than just going on what I was reading about in the brochure, I was actually talking to people, and they all felt like good people. They all were very helpful people, and they talked a lot about how they got a lot of their values from LBS. Second, the network, like what Meena said, was immense in India, in the Middle East, everywhere outside the US. And US was, and then third point was I never really wanted to go to the US or settle in the US for a variety of reasons, because you're taking on a huge financial commitment, and there's a high likelihood that it's easier to get to kind of repay that loan, that commitment, while you're living outside of India. Now most MBA schools in the US do have the 3-year OPT because they've kind of worked around it. It's still a huge uncertainty you're dealing with. That once I get laid off, once I lose a job, once I don't get a job after the MBA, there's every chance in the world that I will not be able to stay in the same country. I will have to look for another geography where probably this school's catchment area isn't as strong. So from that lens, practicality perspective, this made all the more sense to apply to LBS because you had the European market open to you, and which currently worked out for me as well, because in a COVID scenario where you had almost your regular recruiters, consulting firms, banks, all rescinding offers, all going into their own shells of protecting their existing business, I managed to actually find a job in a very interesting low impact geography from COVID, like Nordics, where actually there were no lockdowns either. Business was as usual. People were, and it ended up being a great experience trying something new. I never thought I would ever live in Stockholm, but I learned so much about my own work ethics. And I think all those experiences ultimately made sense. So think about what is it that you really, what matters to you, your personal circumstances. Like Mitrina's husband was there. I didn't have that constraint, but I wanted to not be based in the US. Like Mitrina, I was also looking to be close to my parents. And 15-hour flight is a 15-hour flight. 7 hours is half of that. Third, finally, I did love the city. I did find promise in the European work culture, in the European value system, which I thought I could work with versus the American system. So I would say those are the factors I considered in my research and deciding which school to go to.
Yeah, and we've discussed some great points here. We're talking about diversity, we're talking about personal priorities, professional priorities, and the kind of agility you want in your post-MBA career. I think with that, and these are things that we're going to return to during the conversation. But now that both of you are on the other side, how would you define the European MBA brand as opposed to the US model? Very briefly.
Pranjal, maybe yes. Yeah.
I could probably summarize it very shortly as saying the European MBA brand is great in Europe and Middle East. The American brand is strong in America. Singapore, I would say, is INSEAD, NUS, HKUST, plus a mix of everybody else. It's a bit of a mixed bag. India, if you're staying in India post-MBA, do definitely consider if Indian brands like ISB and IM, ABC are just as strong.
Right.
Yeah, but I would definitely say that, the European MBA brand is, it offers more flexibility. It definitely offers more perspective, a global perspective. I think that's how I would primarily look at it as well, just to add to what
you're looking at Europe, you're looking at Middle East, you're looking at parts of Asia, versus
Correct.
an American school, you find 70% of your students are American who will stay in the US after. And out of the 30%, probably another 20% of the international students will also stay in the US. So that 10% will disseminate around the world, but 10% of that versus 50 to 70% of European schools will be in different geographies. Obviously, it's a more global span.
Yeah. Mitrabina?
Right. I was just going to add that, when I was applying back in my days, I somewhere felt that maybe not everybody is aware of European brands because US brands and M7, everybody knows, right? But the right people knew the European brands. And, every time I would tell them that, hey, I'm going for this 1-year program, they would be like, oh, are you going for exec? Oh, what kind of program is there? France, this, that. But I knew during recruiting that the right people were just aware of European brands and they probably would place it at same par as the American brands. And now that I'm based in Middle East, I do see that it's easier to get your foot through the door through even with an European brand.
Yeah, and I definitely feel that awareness and that recognition is it has just become stronger year on year.
Right.
Okay, so one of the conversation points that I really want to pivot to is also now talking a little bit about recruitment realities in slightly more detail, because when a lot of Indian professionals speak to us, they do aspire towards the triple jump. They're thinking of changing industry, they're thinking of changing function and their geography. Now, looking at your cohorts, I want to understand the reality of achieving even two of those three, in the current European market.
Okay, maybe I can start. So
Yes.
it's an excellent question, Natasha, and basically this is on a lot of people's mind because people want to do that triple jump, they want to change their function, geography, etc. And then to be very mindful, a 1 year program or a 10-month program or a shorter program for that matter, uh, things are different. What I mean by that is literally when I joined, it was P2. I mean there are like 5 periods, and like in P2, we were literally sitting for internship recruitment along with the J batch. So we just enter and, if somebody is already decided, like when I saw my peers who did the triple jump, they were already decided, they had done a lot of groundwork before joining. Uh, and somebody who aspires has to be realistic about this, because you cannot be like, oh, you know what, I'm working in finance and let me see, I'll go to the B school and then figure out which whether consulting is for me or whether startups are for me, whether I want to be in Europe, do I want to change function. It You have to be slightly more proactive and figure out what you really want. Do you have the transferable skill sets to make that triple jump? And also networking is very important. Like I would say a lot of, especially European placements are not as structured in my experience as the US ones. Like whatever I heard from my peers, like how recruiters would come to campus, we did have. But if you wanted something out of the people who, I mean, out of the companies who were coming to campus, you would have to network yourself and secure that job. So someone who aspires the triple jump has to do a thorough research into what and where he or she can place themselves, and just before, like, do a lot of groundwork before joining the school. Over to you,
Yeah.
Pranjal.
Thanks, Katarina. Completely echoing you again, but maybe just also would add that it also depends on where are you planning to jump to.
Hmm.
Because, for example, if you're planning to jump to consulting in London after working as an engineer or a doctor in India, that is hard, but potentially possible. If you're planning to move from being a consultant in, let's say, the Middle East, in the strategy space, into getting into something like banking or tech, for two very different reasons, it's almost impossible in the current climate. Because, for example, banks, I'll just take the LBS example. Banks recruit typically 15 to 20 students from a pool of about 300 students who all want to get into investment banking because it sounds like the glamorous job. Now, place yourself in that situation. There are people who have already been in banking or in finance, and it's easier for a recruiter to sort of take this person and move with them. And as recruiting pool becomes shorter and bank budgets and everything post COVID have been recruiting budgets for their employers have been quite small. So they all want to take safe bets. Nobody wants to easily go for the big swing candidates. Consulting firms can do it more easily because they're looking for just having that sort of diversity in their candidate pool. But aside from that, it's very difficult. Now, even worse is for smaller companies or like startups or tech companies for two reasons. One, tech companies don't hire a year in advance like banks and banks and consulting firms. You'd probably have a job in case of INSEAD 6 months in advance. In case of LBS, a year plus in advance.
Yeah.
So contrast that to a startup or a tech company, which will probably be giving you an offer, looking to recruit only 1 or 2 months before they, or like even literally when they need to fill that one particular role. They're not looking for that pool of candidates. Plus, they're looking for people who probably have done something like this. Because if I'm going to hire one person in that role, I want to be safe. Especially when I somehow with some difficulty managed to get that one job requisition out of the HR. So again, a lot depends on where are you planning to jump to. I would say triple jump is very tough. Try and think of ways how you can gradually break that jump down into different steps. Maybe geography first, or then industry, then job function. So, not saying don't do it. I'm saying it's very tough. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket, and try to stagger out that jump over the next 2 to 3 years after the MBA, if that works for you.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to get questions, so we'll get to it during the course of this conversation. But I think I do want to talk about recruitment because the contours of recruitment have, and discussion and networking and coffee chats have really evolved over the past, yes, over the past years, but I think most sharply in the last year or so. And I think that is an element of the experience that a potential applicant does need to be aware of. And here again, I'd want to maybe talk to you a little bit about your experiences, because I'd like to understand what are the most consistently underrated campus resources that students need to leverage for recruitment.
Sure.
Pranjal,
All
maybe you
right.
can start.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the most underrated resources is the Career Center. For example, at LBS, the Career Center has sectoral experts who can help you with CVs, cover letters, networking. And they have a pool of career coaches who help you prepare for interviews, who help you dig into your resume, who help you try and decide what you want to do in case you're undecided. Because, we all write things that I want to do this post MBA and do that. But a few months in, obviously your thinking evolves. So just if you're feeling lost out, or if you're feeling like, oh my God, what am I going to do next? These resources are there. These are people who've probably been in those shoes. A lot of them are extremely qualified board members, people with decades of work experience across industries. And I feel like in your rush to network with, companies outside the campus, with students, it's very easy to forget that this is a ready pool of people who literally have a job that is to help you to get a job. So I think leveraging the Career Center is one of the most underrated things that the one resource people don't. So from day one, you should just make sure you book up coaching appointments, make sure you book appointments with the sector leads that you're interested to work with, and try and get a sense from them on one, how can I best position myself? How can I best position my CV? What stands out in my profile? Most importantly, do you know someone I can talk to?
Right. Sharing my experience, I agree with Pranjal. Though I would say for my switches, I feel the most underrated are your peers, because yeah, even INSEAD has this CDC career development coaching center, and people are there. And I wanted to get into this FMCG sector at that time, and they kind of handed me like a questionnaire saying that, okay, what are your skills, where do you see yourself, what are the top companies you want to work for, the usual blah blah. And they were very extremely helpful, not doubt. But what I realized is, when I spoke to my peers of this is what I plan to do, this is what I wish to do, they connected me with their peers, and like a whole integrated web of network which just rises up, and they're truly there to help you, because all of us have been in same shoes, right, through the whole uncertainty of the MBA journey, and thinking how do we get placed, to the right company, and can we pay off our loans. Everybody has been through that journey, so they are more than happy to help you. And today same, like if somebody comes to me for some current student, or a younger alum comes to me and says, oh, you know what, I'm looking for career opportunities in Saudi and in SaaS and tech sector, etc., I'll be more than happy to help them. But I mean, that is one. And I would just say, build genuine, authentic relationships. And this network is unbreakable. This is something that goes a long way, not just post MBA placements, but even navigating your career quite few years down into your career also, like maybe 10-15 years down the lane, some exec position or senior leadership position comes. You can definitely reach out to somebody in your network and say, hey, you know what, I'm interested for this, do you know somebody? And you will be surprised at how strong a network is, and somebody will pop up to help you. So
Yeah.
that's
And, I'm glad we're talking about networking, because, that was going to be, closely related to my next question. Because if you look at the location of both institutions, so whether it's in the heart of a global financial capital like London, or whether it's like a multi-campus setup like INSEAD, I want to understand how the location and the structure of the school, fundamentally changed how you approached networking and job hunting, because both schools have extremely well connected cohorts, but how did those locational elements strengthen your ability to form networks?
Maybe I'll start first. So I Basically started with Fontainebleau campus, which is in France, and then I did my last period in Singapore. And to be very honest, a lot of my seniors told me that it doesn't matter whether you're in France, in the Fontainebleau campus, or in Singapore campus, because you can recruit for companies which are based in either locations globally, sitting in any campus. And it truly did live up to its reputation, because I remember interviewing for a company which was in Singapore sitting in France. And then when I was in P5, I was recruiting for a company in Switzerland sitting from the Singapore campus. That said, this is the fluidity that was there available whether you were in either of the campuses. And in terms of actual location, Fontainebleau is around 70 kilometers from Paris. So I remember a lot of times I would have to travel to Paris, taking the time out in that day. So I would have to miss classes. I would have to inform my professors if there was any recruiting event. That was slightly tedious for me, to be very honest, because I am from Mumbai and I'm used to like everything efficient, right? But it's not that efficient in Fontainebleau because it's a very rural town in France, and waiting for the trains and everything was a nightmare. So I would have to, that was not a showstopper for me, but I would have to plan really in advance to either travel to London, because I did travel to London also for jobs, because it's, because of the languages, etc. Like in France, because of language barrier, opportunities are slightly limited. Whether it was traveling to London or Amsterdam or Luxembourg, I would have to plan in advance. But yes, traveling was not so tedious once you got the hang of it. Basically, the whole of Europe was accessible. So whether I wanted to apply to any company anywhere in Europe, I would have to be proactive and do it myself. And Singapore comparatively was way easier, because when I was in P5 in Singapore, everything is like very efficient in Singapore compared to like the travel times were lesser, the travel infrastructure was better, so networking was way easier. So that's my experience. Pranjal, over to you.
Thank you. So my experience at LBS was, I would say it was both similar and different, because when I started the MBA, obviously London as usual, very fast paced, and LBS is located in city center, next to Regent's Park, and everything is super accessible. So you could actually go to consulting firm offices for coffee chats, interviews. You could just reach out to people and say, "Hey, can I have a coffee chat with you?" And they would give you time, and that would and it was quite efficient, because I do my class and be done like 1:30 and be like, can I meet you at 3? Uh, Grab lunch, get into the tube, 15 minutes, I'm in the area, and we have a coffee chat and be back for my 3:30, 4 p.m. class. Uh, so that's definitely quite contrasted to with three years experience. But then obviously part of it was also impacted by COVID, because once COVID happened, so better part of my second half of first year and first half of second year, like a full 12-month period, there was obviously lockdowns. So everything was very virtual. So it didn't matter whether you were LBS, INSEAD, whether you were based in London, Fontainebleau, or India. You pretty much had the same modus operandi and the same kind of platforms. That said,
Yeah.
While I was at Ericsson, we used to go to LBS campus and INSEAD campus, and I used to be part of the recruitment team there every year, twice a year almost. And you could feel the difference of accessibility. And then even now, when I go to LBS, or when people reach out to me from LBS and say, "Hey, can we, get a coffee chat with you at the LinkedIn office?" It is easier. It is definitely one of the biggest advantages of being in London. And that said, there is definitely a bias for candidates who are locally placed. So, example, if I'm a hiring manager sitting in Amazon, in ATK, or in McKinsey, and I mean McKinsey consulting not so much, because structured recruitment as well, but you definitely have a bias for saying, "Hey, this guy's based right here. I can." He probably has done more relevant work. And that I also see one question which I can probably segue into an answer is around, and I think you also touched on it, between around limitation due to local language proficiency and immigration. Uh, it is definitely easier to apply for London jobs while sitting in UK, because we don't have to pay for relocation. Visa applications are easier. It's easier to convince someone that you'd be a worthwhile candidate to support with a skilled worker visa, even if not, because you've graduated from a your British university, you are eligible for the post-study work visa. So all those things make you more make you easier on the eye higher compared to someone who's coming in from outside the country. And you always have the European market open to you, because even though France, Germany, there are some language barriers. Nordics, Benelux, which is your Netherlands, mostly Amsterdam area, and a lot of global companies across geographies within Europe are easily accessible to you. You can take the Eurostar, travel to those offices. For example, right before COVID, for internship interviews, I went all the way to Brussels for the main final round interview.
Yeah. And I think, with a European MBA, the advantage that you have is just the kind of spread of, geographies, countries. So yes, there will be some language barriers, but I think it would be wrong to generalize them across, all opportunities available to those graduating from European MBAs. And if you are interested in local opportunities and you want to make the effort to learn the language, I'm sure there are programs, or there are short-term courses within the school that will help you bridge the gap. And yeah, sorry.
So LBS actually offers language programs in
Exactly.
German, French, Dutch, Italian. I think a plethora of languages, which is
Yeah,
part of your course.
Yeah, and even I think we've visited, HEC. We've spoken to folks at INSEAD. There are opportunities for you to pick up enough proficiency if you are thinking of building a career in those markets. So I think one of the things that you definitely need to be open to with the European experience is just understanding that it's not a uniform experience. There's a lot of texture, and you will find the chances of you finding something that suits your needs with the opportunities available and the variety available is extremely high. Not only are you thinking of an international career, but you could also be looking at a European base in the future. I think there's just a lot more that you need to consider about where you want to maybe plan your future. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, I just want to now talk about, because we're talking about elements that I wanted to also bring together in a question, that for an Indian applicant coming from largely homogeneous work environments, or the experience tends to be centered around performance, centered around certain very uniform benchmarks. What is the biggest culture shock, or culture growth rather, that they should prepare for when joining cohorts, whether at LBS, whether at INSEAD?
I could take that one.
Sure.
So essentially, I think for me, one of the biggest differences was collaboration, not competition. Because when you compare that or contrast that with an Indian business school or even an undergrad school, everyone's looking for to be in the top 10% of the class. And at LBS, it's grades non-disclosure, and employers cannot ask for your grades. At best, they can, like even places like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain, at best they can ask for is your GMAT score. They cannot ask for your grades. So your grades don't matter. You just need to pass. You need to make sure you have the skills, and everything is in a group study. So you sink and swim together. And I think that's something that somehow, I mean, as a cultural value system, we sometimes lack, because we've just always been taught to compete and be on top, and that's great. But then in an MBA setup, at least at LBS, I was really forced to challenge those assumptions and be like, okay, no, I have to succeed together. So let's figure out how we can best do it together. Because if one person in our study group is doing terribly, all of us are going to have our grades dragged down with it.
Yeah. And that's something that I've heard echoed across different graduates from LBS and INSEAD. So, Mitrabina, if you want to add your perspective as well.
Yeah, I was going to share an experience of my journey at INSEAD. Rightly said, what Angela said. And adding on to that, I noticed that, for Indian students, or how we probably feel the reward is, like how we are rewarded is somebody who's good at execution, somebody who's good at speed, somebody who's good at grades, right? So we know that these are the structured way that you will get rewarded at work or anywhere. And when at INSEAD, one of the few initial, there was this leadership outdoor program where we had to go to a rural school and just build them a playground. And in my study group, there were people from China, Russia, and two of them were Europeans, one from Belgium, one from Portugal. And we had to saw woods and make a fence, right? And this is something I had not done before, and it was raining out in the forest. And I remember it was not about who does fastest or who does the best sawing or whatever. Not a single, not one opinion dominated the entire study group. It was more like, okay, you know what, we kind of broke the task. Somebody was getting logs, somebody was trying to fit the, what is the area, etc. Anyways, not getting into the operational details. I felt that it was not about just executing. It was also about who's listening to you, right? How do you really rate leadership? Maybe somebody who listens well, maybe somebody who keeps the team together. So leadership is a lot of activities than just, here's your result and here's your report, which I had been used to in a certain manner. So here's your fence, and there you go. Even if you take more time, it's about getting that collaboration done rightly, like Pranjal said. So I think I was very happy of this. I really welcomed it. So it was not a culture shock, but yeah, as such, if students, Indian students are not expecting this, I think it'll be they will be in for a pleasant surprise and probably add more diversity and more depth to their leadership style.
So, I'm also looking at the questions that we have, and there are a couple of things that maybe I'd like to get your opinions on. But I think one of the things that I will want to segue, because I do feel that we do need to touch on a little bit around, what the applications should look like for the two schools, very briefly. But if a candidate is torn between LBS and INSEAD, today, if they're considering both options, what is the one personality or ambition trait that should lead their decision to pick one over the other? And I'm sure, you guys have interacted enough with, people across different European schools to make that judgment. But Pranjal, I'd love if you can give us a perspective, and then, Mitrabina again. You're on mute, Pranjal.
One thing I think that definitely, for me, stands out as a personality trait is openness to diversity. I mean, it's easy to say you value the diversity, but are you able to handle it? Because diversity comes with with the need to be open to that diverse set of thoughts. My study group, for example, had a Greek veterinarian doctor, Uruguayan banker, Lebanese entrepreneur, another finance guy from Singapore, ethnic Asian, and an Asian American techie who wanted to get into investment banking. So very different personalities, all of them very strong personalities. But to make meaningful connections and work with them, you need to have openness to those ideas. I think we're so used to just saying, I have said it, I know this best, and let me just go for it. That won't work. You have to be open to the idea, okay, I'm going to make new connections, I'm going to learn to fail with them, I'm going to learn to, if you're someone who enjoys making those connections and come with that humility, then LBS is a great place to go.
Mitrabina?
Yeah. Natasha, great question. And this question pops up very often. It had popped up during my time too. I think both of them are world-class schools. If you boil it down to that one day, maybe I would say for INSEAD, you should be really comfortable with pace, like a very accelerated pace, and comfort with ambiguity, because INSEAD also equally well known for its diverse international cohort, not in just terms of culture, but also profession, like Pranjal's experience you mentioned. But yes, you should be definitely, it's a 10-month program, you should be definitely comfortable with the fast pace, and every day is new day, ambiguous day. You never know what comes next, networking, coursework, etc. You should be comfortable with that pace and the ambiguity.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the pace is something that someone applying to INSEAD really needs to research and be comfortable with. Now, the reason I wanted to touch on these elements is because I do see questions in, the chat box around the admissions process. And while we, want to discuss this more holistically, there's an interesting question here. What, in your opinion, would make an individual stand out both during the admissions process and while trying to secure a job? And the reason I'd like to have a bit of a discussion around this is because I do feel that the UK and European schools, the kind of applications individuals are expected to put together are really holistic. They rely a lot on reflection. They do ask applicants to really think through different elements of the experience that they want to choose for themselves. And while as an admissions consultant, I always tell people that you do need to understand authenticity matters a lot, because given the breadth of these applications, it is not possible to just come with a uniform value system and say, oh, I'm just going to answer why MBA and why the school, and I'll be through. I think standing out during the admissions process for both these schools is an extremely nuanced process. It's an extremely complex, soul searching kind of exercise. So I just want to understand that, do you have an opinion, both of you, on, what would make an individual stand out for these particular schools in the application process?
Right. Maybe I can go first this time. In my experience, yes, Natasha, all the points that you said, holistic, authentic, is very important. I think reflection is also important, like you said. In the reflection, just try and highlight points, or jot down points where you really made an impact. Because a lot of times, I've seen candidates, and probably even I had that at some point, thinking that, oh, you know what, I have just done, I'm just saying it like, oh, I've just done, like, at this end of the day Excel sheets, and I've just presented to my boss. But just think through, okay, what was it that you were really helping, who was it really you were helping, and how were you helping, right? So if it was something about writing down, say, I had my first job like import of raw materials and capex items, right? So it was really helping my company to produce goods that would help the build infrastructure of the country, right? I mean, just try to think that long term picture, who you are helping, where you are really helping out the community in the whole ecosystem. And community, I just don't mean like a non-profit work or something. How are you really impacting people's lives? So I know it's very easy to just think, oh, it's a regular job, etc. Just reflect very hard that whose lives are you making better, how are you contributing at the end of the day. Bring that out in the application. That will really help you to stand out from the pool.
Yeah,
Over to
that's
you, Pranjal.
extremely true. I think a lot of the INSEAD questions look to see impact, and they look to understand your perspective, not just from your own viewpoint and how it benefits you, but also in terms of how it benefits relationships that you have with others and communities at large. So I think that's extremely true. Pranjal, from the LBS perspective.
Absolutely. So LBS perspective is quite is different if I was to look at it from that lens, because LBS isn't looking for people who are going to cure cancer. What they look for two things. One being, are you someone who has the profile and a plan to land the job you claim to be saying that you will land after the MBA? Basically, they don't want you to be the to bringing down the employment stats. Of course, they go on with what's in your essay, but that essay needs to be sensible, needs to show a credible plan, needs to show research that you know what exactly that you're going to leverage in LBS and in your London experience and in your background. Make yourself a prime candidate for the job you're gunning for. The second thing they look for is, how much do you really want LBS for LBS? Because this is a school that competes for some of the best candidates globally with Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, M7s, everyone. Now they want people who really want LBS for LBS. If you say, if your answer for why LBS is a sentence where I can take out the word LBS and insert INSEAD or insert Harvard, they're not looking for it. They're looking for you to tell exactly why you want LBS, because they want to know if they gave you an offer, you're not an offer wasted.
And I think, since we interact with individuals applying to both schools, I think the common thread is really what makes you stand out is clarity. And that clarity needs to be the clarity of your ambition, the clarity of your passion and your reasons for doing what you do and the choices that you make, as well as an understanding of what you want to be involved in, not just your plan, your short-term goal, your long-term goal, but do you even have a plan B? Do you think about how you want to be involved in the professions where you see yourself? And they're not looking for a politically correct answer, but they're really looking for that authentic clarity in your responses. And the same goes for when you're trying to secure a job. The clarity that you bring to the process of networking, of interacting with leadership, with sector experts, even within the resources and the mentors that you cultivate at school, what will stand out is the clarity of purpose that you have. So I think I would want to just add on to that and answer this question. Another question which I will answer is, will having international experience be an advantage for admission to INSEAD? The short answer, yes, it would be an advantage. INSEAD definitely values anyone with cross-cultural experiences, and if you have been immersed in a new culture, or you've kind of had to adjust to new ways of thinking and building perspective, it will be a definite advantage in how you position your application. So yes, it does matter, and it's a significant advantage. Another question that's come, and I think I'll answer it, but if any of you want to jump in, does this decision differ if you're an American citizen already, assuming that you can get into a like-for-like MBA program of a similar caliber, I'm assuming? I feel that yes, even if you are a citizen, not necessarily applying as an international applicant, but you're thinking of whether as an American citizen you're going to have a like-for-like MBA experience. I'm assuming that's your question. The answer is yes. But the reasons why you would look at a European program if you are an American citizen needs to be really clear. You need to think about the kind of diversity that you're looking for in a program, how that's going to impact your perspective and the experience that you want. And I think critically, you also need to think about things like the duration of the program, because while you are getting that global experience, the amount of time that you're packing it into is going to change. And like Pranjal and Mitrabina mentioned, you did have American peers in your cohort, and their reasons for choosing a European program would also center around what they want to gain from that global experience, I'm assuming. If there's anything more, Pranjal or Mitrabina.
So one thing and I'll hand over to you as well in 3 answers, but one thing that definitely stood out to me was that there was about 15% candidates. So LBS has a very geographically earmarked percentage of candidates from each pool. So if you're an American citizen, you're judged in a different pool versus the Indian pool. And so you had a fairly large cohort. So that's why the differentiation starts right at the start, that, okay, you're coming as part of a different portion of the cohort. But then in terms of why a lot of the Americans came to London to do the MBA here was because they wanted to build that international profile. Because ultimately, when you're working for a global firm, they just wanted to kind of build that profile. Some of them actually liked the European working culture better. Because American work culture is also quite intense. It's work hard, play hard, and make a lot of money. European culture is a lot more about let's focus on the soft aspects of life. And there are merits and demerits to both sides, and they probably wanted to experience that. A lot of them went back to the US. A lot of them are still working in London, and some of them are even working in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry, maybe I'll just add. So yeah, right. Even for INSEAD, there's a candidate pool, right? And there were Americans in the cohort. And if I read the question a bit more, maybe I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but a lot of people, I mean, during my time, second MBAs plus couple of American MBAs, they had these questions like, oh, how's the coursework here? Is it different than Indian MBAs, or is it different than US MBAs? And like this, I remember Stanford has this touchy-feely some course, and we literally could pay and have a part of that course. So, and INSEAD has its first 100 days, like the very popular course where, you're there for like 2 weeks and you have to turn around a dying company. So there are, I would say, if you're looking in terms of par with MBA schools in US, if that is your question, I would say some of the electives are they amazing, because they kind of really turned around the way I thought. And what I understood from my peers, they were at par with a couple of electives which were in US. And even then, you could also if you say, oh, you know what, I wish I had this touchy feely, because it kind of really shapes your leadership perspective in a very deep rooted manner. You can actually sign up for those, like with a little bit of extra payment. You have access to those because because again, the schools invest in the curriculum, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think thanks for adding that dimension as well, Mitrapina. I think in terms of quality exposure, just opportunities to build critical skills, as well as, the kind of geography that you're aiming for, it does make sense to consider it. Another question, what were the top three decision makers for both of you to choose your respective schools? I think we've touched on this as part of the initial answer, but I would like to do this as a rapid fire. So, Pranjal, top three decision points for you to choose your school.
London. The fact that I could get ILR if I got a job there for 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
ILR and PR, versus the uncertainty of doing this in a geography like Singapore or US, where there's no rules. That's second. Third was pretty much just closeness to home.
Okay. And
For me, it
Mitrapina,
was
top three.
For me, top three, I would say number one, the program duration. Number two, the program fees, because at that time I found INSEAD in the top brands, one of the cheapest out of all the programs, and I was going to sponsor it completely out of my salary and scholarship. So it was very important I could afford them. And third, of course, proximity to India.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, we have an interesting question, and I will say that we'll answer this from the MBA perspective. So, someone's asked, are there long-term job opportunities after, let's say, MSc or MIM in fields such as marketing, luxury brand management from universities such as INSEAD, EDEC, HEC, ESSEC, assuming one knows French? Now, I can't speak from the MBA perspective, and I'm sure you guys have the perspective from your respective schools. If you are thinking of a career in luxury brand management, I would definitely say Europe and European business schools are the place to be. I would even add to this, apart from HEC, I would also add Bocconi to the mix. They do have deep connections within the luxury sector. You have opportunities to do internships, and we've met and interacted with applicants and students who do have chosen that. I do feel that if you are building a career in luxury brand management, understanding the local language, whether it's French or whether it's Italian, will be critical. We do know of people who have shifted paths away from luxury brand management because they were not necessarily invested in learning languages or going down those paths. But if you are and you're willing to make the effort, then I think those Europe and European business schools can offer you unparalleled access. So, Pranjal, Mitrapina?
Just one thing to add there, LBS has Walpole Luxury Leaders of Tomorrow program.
Yes.
And a luxury strategy course, as well as a brand management course. So as part of Walpole, you actually get to be mentored by one of the members. So Walpole is the member association for all the luxury brands of UK, including the White Company, Burberry, Edrington Beam, Suntory, Diageo, Mulberry, everyone. And the CEO of Walpole, Helen Brocklebank, she personally curates this program. Now it's Nick Temperley who does it, who heads Edrington Beam Suntory. And it is basically an immersion into the you have master classes with luxury leaders, 10 of them. You get to build and to go for Walpole, organize events. So it is a great way to integrate yourselves into that community, which is to be absolutely honest, very incestuous and closed off unless you know people who know people. So it's a great
Yeah, I
way to
think
find.
networking,
Yeah.
networking just assumes a whole different dimension in
Oh
if you're planning to build that. Yeah.
yeah.
And I just want to ask you, Pranjal, from your cohort's experience, is understanding French, Italian going to be critical for
For
that
Walpole,
one?
no. For Walpole, no. But if you're going to apply to, say, a Mayor's or Caring, it is important. But be mindful of one thing: the sponsorship routes are limited in this industry
Yes.
because for marketing, luxury branding, they have a lot of local candidates. So you're really fighting for sponsorship.
Yeah, I think that's a good point and good to know. Mitrubina, anything from your cohort that you'd want to add as perspective as well?
Sure, it's a good question, and I was also one of those people who wanted to pursue career either in. We had this club called RCLG, and stood for luxury, and you won't believe it. Like I really once when I approached an alumni, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm thinking even this field is quite good. He actually gave me a proper understanding that be mindful. Do you really want to join this sector because this is what the sector is about versus like an FMCG that you want to join versus a retail sector. Nonetheless, I still went ahead and just like Pranjal mentioned, INSEAD at my time didn't have like structured courses, but we could always go for these treks to these companies. So I went for those treks and networked with people. And what I realized that time is it was good for me. I realized I didn't want to be that sector anymore. I wanted to be more in the technology sector, etc. But in my observation, my peers who have made that shift to this sector, they really knew why they wanted to get in. They really knew what they had to offer. So not just the sponsorship. A lot of these companies, apart from the local pool, they promote a lot of ingrown talent, right? Because only somebody who's working right from grassroots level will know what are the customer trends, what are the customer requirements, etc. Maybe if you just come from, like for me, for example, I just came from city finance and I want to join like a luxury company, I will not know the in and out of the company, right? And I will probably take a longer time than somebody who's already available. So be really clear why you want to get in and what you have to offer the company, and then probably the path is way easy for you then.
And
Yeah.
just to maybe add to that as well, they're looking for people who are incredibly passionate. And retail is not about selling the best quality good. It is
Yes.
about selling a story and a narrative. So, are you really bought into the idea yourself that if I'm buying a mesh scarf, you're not buying a scarf or silk scarf. You're buying a story that comes with that scarf. So, are you
Yeah.
bought into that whole idea?
Yeah.
My area, why the reason why I went into alcohol was luxury alcohol. So because I was working with Diageo for about 3 years as in consulting, so I had a sense of that. So what does good single malt taste like? What is the story behind single malt? Why is a Scottish single malt whiskey different from an American grain based whiskey? So that sort of passion is what they're looking to hire. So unless you have that passion for a particular subsector within that space, and you're willing to bet your career on it, it's tough.
I think both are incredibly useful perspectives, and I hope it's helped the person asking that question. I'm very mindful of time. We're almost at the hour, so I'd like to just take on one last question before we say thank you to everyone attending. And please reach out to us. This is just 1 hour of conversation, but if you have plans of your own and you're thinking of a European program, GMAT Club will add contact details to the chat. They've already added it before, but reach out to me at the Red Pen. The email address and the contact number is mentioned and will be mentioned again. So reach out to us for a conversation that's a little more customized to the goals that you have. Okay, the last question. What's the thought process that should go behind is selecting electives within the MBA program? Briefly, Pranjal, do you want to take that on? And Mitrubina, you can add on to it as well.
Sure. Sure. So LBS program is extremely tailored, and that tailoring increases gradually through your MBA course. So your first 6 months is not a core, which is non-negotiable. Everybody does the same courses. Then you have something called tailored core, where you have a smaller pool from which you select, I think, 6 out of 12 courses or something. And then as you're closing your first year, just so literally you start in July, and by March is when you start doing your electives. So by this point you have a fairly good idea of what you want to recruit for. So that's definitely one guardrail. Like, okay, if I want to recruit for PEDC, there's a PEDC cohort of electives. So look through that. Second consideration is who's teaching. A lot of people go after certain professors who are extremely knowledgeable, who they want to learn from. The third thing is also certain courses where you want to develop soft skills. For example, you have in LBS you had something there were a couple of courses actually. That one is negotiations and bargaining. It goes for a massive premium. So and most schools have this issue where you have to choose electives within a certain credit budget. So avoid going for the courses which literally take your complete credit balance, and then you don't have enough credit balance to take other good courses. It's great to take three good courses versus that one course everybody goes after and then not being able to take anything else. Because a lot of these courses also come up like ad hoc. If someone drops it, you can pick it up and ad drops. But then ultimately, for some of these softer skill courses, I would always recommend don't just go for subject matter courses, but also go for some of these softer skill courses like interpersonal dynamics, negotiations and bargaining. They have another one called Paths to Power. All these courses, they don't have any particular subject matter expertise like, finance or supply chain or something, but they are a lot more about building softer skills. And I think one of the biggest advantages if you only ever worked in India, or if you work primarily with an Indian atmosphere, is to actually build those soft skills in a more structured way and to learn certain things. For example, Paths to Power is all about how do you position yourself favorably in a large conglomerate business, be close to it, and how do you really build that sort of soft power in the office workplace.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just add my experience quickly. So yeah, INSEAD also, like LBS, has a similar process, and there is a bidding system, and after P2 you can basically take electives. And I think it's the same madness here. Like, people are rushing for the most popular electives, the professors they want to be at. When for me personally, I had a set of thoughts like, oh, I want to do anything and everything other than finance. So I looked for, say, for example, I was very curious about marketing. I took a lot of marketing electives, and after like P3, I got tired of marketing electives because they all felt like, oh, it's not matching with my not pedigree, but maybe my thought process, where I was like very data oriented, data churning to find results, etc. Then I took up a lot of leadership courses, where I was like truly impressed. I was like, oh, I didn't know I was a personality XYZ, right? And then the professor would give us courses. So those were very, very revealing about my leadership style. So I think just try to understand what you really want to do. Learn in this period of your time, because this is the last time probably you'll have such an intense studying time. A lot of people forget that they're going to study also, apart from the networking. So if you want to go into somebody who's coming from non-finance background, maybe they want to learn finance. And I remember a lot of my engineering peers, they were very impressed by the finance electives, but I didn't go for them because I was like, okay, I had enough of finance. So that was my way of selecting the electives.
Thanks a lot. I think what I'd really like, and I'd like to leave anyone who's attending this session with these thoughts, is that I think it's important, though we say this every year, that choose a program based on your needs, choose a program based on what you want to do. I think it's more important that this year individuals applying for an MBA consider global options, do not really center their choices in a particular geography only. And with that said, considering European programs, considering programs in the UK, would really broaden your perspective to the kind of global opportunities that exist. So for anyone thinking of applying, I think include European schools in your long list of schools to research. There are huge opportunities. I think the programs and their means of evaluating people are extremely holistic, and they will offer you an experience that can open your eyes to post-MBA careers, to geographies, and to how you approach, I think, the just the landscape of how you want to build your career over the next 3 to 5 years in a very different manner. They are very different. They are going to be extremely reliant on how you research opportunities, but it's a good time to start. European programs are also very accessible. Admissions committees do have structured outreach. So start now. Book time, try and have profile evaluation discussions early on. And I think you could open doors to just a completely new career direction. So I think all the best to anyone who's applying. Reach out if you need to have a further conversation with us. But I would just like to say thank you, Mitrabina and Pranjal, because I think these insights have been extremely useful and should help anyone attending or watching this webinar indeed in the future. So thank you very, very much.